Stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned. I am here with the coach, John Brent.
Man, and I'm here with the vet, Mr. Ian Griffin.
Man, we got stuff going all over this country right now.
Man.
Just about a month ago, we had, Coach, we had the Supreme Court diminish its reputation because somebody decided upon themselves to leak some stuff out. I don't know, maybe it was for political timing because apparently one party is not going to get anybody to go to the damn polls, or, I don't know, or maybe it was the legitimate. But so anyway, it got leaked out,
Sure.
and by the time we release this, we don't know yet, but it might have been released for good, is the Supreme Court is supposedly going to rule a 5-4 decision on the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
And real quick, just because I have studied it so much, I want to give a real 1 minute or less
Yes.
understanding of what Roe versus Wade and how it started, where it came from.
Yes.
Okay. Roe v. Wade is not a lady by the name of Roe. Her real name was Norma McCorvin.
Mm-hmm.
And in Dallas, Texas, at that time, you could not have an abortion unless there were certain things. One of them was being raped. She then went to the police and said that she was gang raped and wanted to have an abortion.
Yep.
At that time, Henry Wade's police department, Henry Wade being the district attorney of Dallas County, investigated and realized almost immediately that she was lying and that she agreed to that she was lying. But because she still wanted to have the abortion, she went in and sued the district attorney Wade, being Roe v. Wade, that she get an abortion. This was in 1971. Of course, it takes time when you push something on the Supreme Court.
Yep.
2 years later, they ruled in her favor. Ironic thing was the baby was already born. Ruled in her favor that it was a woman's right, constitutional right, to have an abortion, and laid out a first trimester, second trimester, and third trimester that the states could deal with kind of on their own, but this is the way it was set up. Since 1973, that has been kind of the law of the land. Casey versus Planned Parenthood years later kind of stamped that to say, yes, it is a woman's right to choose to have an abortion.
Yep.
But most people that have studied the case for many years with an open mind says, really, they ruled when they shouldn't have ruled, and they ruled on the wrong thing. It wasn't a good decision.
Yeah, even RBG said that.
Right. So now fast forward here, vet, this is where we are.
Yep.
There we go.
So supposedly some staffer or something, I don't know who, leaked out that this is going to happen. Whole world went to hell in a handbasket in a matter of 10 seconds afterward. People on one side believe this, people on the other side believe this. At the end of the day, you're going to ask me about this, Coach, is I'm going to say there's a whole lot of verbal defecation out there in regards to this, but it boils down to two things. A person that believes a woman has a right to their body, I understand it.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that. Or a person that believes that once they identify the life has been born, is alive, that it is life, that it should not be murdered. I understand that too. I understand both of them. And that once it is alive, that once you do anything with it after that, it is murder. So I understand both of these, and both of these are so profound in it that that's hard.
It is very hard.
That is hard. And there's no automatic solution. And this person here is no wronger or righter than this person here in their beliefs. It's their beliefs.
And we have the $1 million debate again.
Yep.
If you're religious and you are going to believe one way based on your religion, if you're not religious, the majority are going to believe another way. Not all, but the majority. There are some people that are religious that believe that women should have the right to choose, but that's a very small amount. So we have this division in our country where religion shouldn't even be brought into the conversation because we have this First Amendment right, not freedom for religion or from religion, but that's a question of the day is when should the government come into my private life? And that's what the deal was about privacy.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So I've heard many people will sit there and say, well, if they believe that the woman shouldn't have the right to the abortion, then they're part of the handmaid's tale. They're the old conservative white people. They're this and this and this. Well, I will tell you, I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of women who hold vast amount of power in their organizations and their institutions. These women that I know, most people would invite to come speak on Women's History Month to motivate and influence a lot of people. Most of them I know believe that abortion's wrong.
And secondly, and
I'm just saying,
Sure,
that's not the old white man. That's
No.
not the handmaid's tale, because I can tell you, these women wield a vast amount of power in the positions they hold.
And I want to piggyback onto that because I work in a prison.
Yep.
Most prisoners, the majority of those prisoners in there are not religious people. Okay.
Yep.
Some go in there, they said the best place to find religion is going to prison. Well, you can find it in there because you know why a lot of people do chapel? Because they get out of their cells. You
Yep.
want to become a Jew, or they go to a Jewish service or a Muslim service because they get certain rights. Okay. I've had this conversation with my inmates over the last month, and I have polled them, and I'm not going to give a specific number, but I would say the majority of when I asked them who is for abortion and not, 8 to 10 hands will almost always go up to say they're against abortion. And when we start unpacking it, you will say that they don't even believe it unless it should be for rape or incest, or a woman is going to die before even the two say
Yeah.
sure. So where did we get this conversation of a majority is when you have a leftist thinking or a liberal thinking. Don't say left. Let's say a liberal thinking, because that's almost me being rude. A liberal thinking that it's a woman's body and she should be able to do with it what she wants to, no matter what.
Wait, hold on, Coach. Hold on. I've seen this. I've seen it several times in the last month, and I'm just flabbergasted when I see this. I've had a couple abortions, and I'll go have another one right now just for the hell of it. And I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that? Or do you realize what you're saying? I mean,
yeah.
I'm just saying something, and I don't want to judge you, but Jesus Christ, man, you just threw that shit right out there on Front Street for everybody, and
Well,
I'm sitting there going,
Yeah.
what, I'm sad when anybody has an abortion, not because I don't want to take away from women's rights. I'm just sad that the predicament evolved to that.
Sure. Now, and that's the extreme. And that's going to be the 1 or 2% of a population that's going to act that way. There is a law in Texas that's never even thought about this, that you can only be married so many times in Texas. There's a number to it.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's 5 or 7. I don't remember. But
I'm staying with 2. I'm no more than that.
But there's a number out there for that. Should there be a number of abortions that the person could have? Well, no, that's a woman's body. She could choose whatever she wants to. Well, if I decide to be married 8, 9, 10 times and another person decides, shoot, I'll sign up with him even though he's been married. Okay, there's always going to be that fringe. But let's go back to the basics of this. When is conception, when is a viability for a fetus to be a heartbeat or it can live on its own, all these things? When 1973, we want to hear all the time that let's follow the science.
I got the science for you,
Okay.
Coach.
Well, first of all, in 1973, when that ruling was done by an all-male court, because
Yeah.
we hear it's a woman's choice, and now you hear people saying, well, Kavanaugh and these guys are making the decisions for me.
You got a
Well, first
woman
of
on
all,
there, and you got to...
all 9 justices in 1973 were male. Okay?
Yeah.
That was before Sandra Day O'Connor came around.
White male.
But the science now is different. Do we want to really go into the science of what a heartbeat is, what's an embryo, what's a cell? If you really want to do that, then give it to the science community and take out the liberals and take out the conservatives, and let's just look at it as a body of scientists. I don't think the pro-choice community really wants that.
They don't.
And I don't think that the pro-life community really wants that either, because pro-life believes as soon as you leave the bedroom and you wipe yourselves up and you go on about your day,
Well,
that's a baby.
When this first started,
I don't
sent
believe
you-
that either.
I think it was from Princeton, but I could be wrong. Okay, but there was a poll done on how many biologists, where's the mark they believe that the life begins. Okay, 95%, only 95% believe at conception. Period. Only 95%. So if you take that poll and you sit there and you throw it in there and you don't throw the abortion scenarios in there and all this other such, and you say only 95%, only 5% do not agree with that. Mm-hmm. And so we'd like to say follow the science. And I mean, that's been a mantra, especially from the left. Follow the science.
Follow the science on climate. And then the Republicans don't really want to follow, depending on which scientists,
You-
they
that
follow
people-
the science on
people-
this. but
People
not on
normally
that.
want to follow the science when their scientists are talking about it, but when the rest of the scientists are talking about it, they don't.
Well, I've said
But this is 95%
Well,
is
I've said
saying,
it many times. Your ideological belief is going to determine which scientists you agree with
Yeah.
and which scientists
Yeah.
you don't. Where does the study come from? If it come from Oral Roberts University and you're a conservative religious
I can
person,
understand that.
that's all that. And if it comes from Harvard and Yale and it comes from a liberal
But this come from an
atheist,
Ivy League school.
Sure.
This come from an Ivy League school.
Well, they must have been paid.
An Ivy League school, come on, think about Ivy League schools, what's been going on lately
Sure.
over there. But so it came from Ivy League schools, said 95% of the biologists, because, let me throw this out there, because, the Supreme Court justice just got confirmed and everything, could not identify what a woman was because she was not a biologist. So we went to biologists. So the biologist says
Right.
that at conception, it is when life begins.
Now, let's go back to the ruling that we have now.
Yes.
Okay, so don't go back to the original one. Let's go back to now. That when someone asked me, my brother actually asked me a week before the election of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I said, dude, I can't vote for Trump. I don't have a clue what he's talking about. I don't have any confidence in him. But I don't know how in the world I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton because to me, she's just vile.
Yeah, Bob.
And he said something to me. He said, you do know that this next president, since all you talk about is your Supreme Court that you study forever, is going to at least get one, possibly two.
Yeah.
And I went off that conversation and I went, wait a minute, I'm not really voting for Trump or Hillary in my estimate. I'm voting for the nomination for the next Supreme Court. And he ended up getting 3 on the court. That court is a conservative leaning court.
Yep.
Most of the time it's going to be 5-4, maybe 6-3 on a good day.
Yeah.
But because of President Donald Trump winning that election, that Roe v. Wade is even being looked at and now possibly going to be overturned on what Texas and Mississippi is trying to do. That's kind of what's went down, okay? Is it right? Now, we talk about precedent, and I'm going to break this down, and I knew we were going to bring this up. Well, precedent's been set, leave it alone, okay? If that was the case, when Dred Scott was done, that was the precedent set that a black man and a black female could not sue because they weren't considered a person, they were considered property.
If we observed precedent, we would still have slaves.
Right.
We wouldn't have gay
So
marriages.
let's-
We hadn't have interracial marriages.
Right.
All these things.
So let's don't look at that. Let's look at the law of each case that comes through because you don't base murder charge on all murder charges that were prior to going what this guy did. You take the actual case that comes into the court
Yep.
and you take that case based on the evidence on that argument. Is it a good or bad argument?
So, Coach, I want to say this. 1973 Roe versus Wade came out, okay? And an abortion was legal off of that ruling, okay? But from 1973 to 2022, our legislative branch has failed to produce
Exactly.
any form of legislation whatsoever to codify that.
This issue shouldn't even be brought up.
And
right
if they did, this wouldn't even be talked about, Roe versus Wade. So the ones that want to go out and freaking, throw a tantrum about it, you need to look at the people you voted for the last freaking 40 damn years and so on, because 50 years actually, they failed. They flat out failed on that part there. Nobody codified that because it was too contentious. And some people go, we'll just count on the ruling to make it through so we don't have to worry about it. But that is the problem, is the legislative branch failed to codify a law that would make sense for the nation. Right. So with that, I'm going to ask you, Coach, with Roe versus Wade being overruled, what will that mean for the states now? What will that mean?
It's going to determine where you live on the majority of the people that vote in that state and the representative that they choose, Republicanism, representing your people, that if you live in the state, say, of Texas or Oklahoma, that is more people in that state believe that a woman should not be able to get an abortion unless it's regulated very heavily with, these things, than if you live in New York or California where they believe it should be more whatever. Now, people say, well, wait a minute, that takes away from a woman's that is poor or a woman that doesn't have the money or or they have to go 3 or 4 states, that can't lose her job or whatever.
Yeah.
And they are correct. Now, I do believe that if this was brought up just as an equal protection issue, that we would have a bigger issue. Because if you can tell me that a person in California can get something and a person in Texas can't just because of where they live, then based on the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, that is an issue. But right now, I'm going to finish it. Right now we have, I want to say 18 states that you can have medicinal marijuana, and a few of those states even recreational marijuana. Mm-hmm. And the other states you can't, because those states say, we don't want it.
Yeah.
And what is the problem is just what you brought up. Because if the federal government would come in and fix the problem, then it wouldn't be a state issue. We've had Congress, we've had presidents, we've had the legislative branches of both houses being conservative at one time, matching a president,
Yep.
and liberal at one time, matching presidents. And you're right, they could have stopped this. Yep. They could have made a law that this wouldn't even be touched anymore. But since they won't work together, our legislative branch has been the biggest breakdown of the 3 branches of government in the last 100 years. Yep. Of any of them. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you go back to the beginning of the country, that was the strongest.
Well, now, I'm going to put some fairness in that, Coach, okay? I think the reason why that was the strongest, we was a young country, and we started building some laws like, okay, this is something everybody should have, or this is something everybody should have, and this is something that everybody should have. And then, up to 1973, abortion was considered murder, So I think in the last 100 years, we've ran out of those things that this is something everybody should have, this is something everybody should have, and now we got into more, I'm going to say, finesse laws that are not necessarily foundational laws. So
we're not trying to stay alive because somebody's killing us. So we got these other issues that we're trying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying these issues aren't important.
They are important.
But what happens is you start having these movements of certain things that become divisive that really isn't important to survive. It's important to live a life that you want to live.
So I'm going to say this is, both sides, they'll taint on each other and they'll say, well, this person's a bad person because they feel that, it's a woman's right to choose. And shame on them for doing that because they're murdering kids. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can understand the murdering part because they feel that on the other side that is when life begins. And if you truly feel that that's when life begins, then why would I be mad at you for thinking that that's bad? I don't think either person is fundamentally bad. I think that they just have different beliefs. And who am I to argue their beliefs on that?
And that's why the issue is so different and divisive is because if you're an 18-year-old person that's about to graduate from high school and you have sex with somebody and you're pregnant and you've got plans to go to college, the right will say, especially the religious right will say, well, you made your bed, lay in it. Mm-hmm. Now, you need to take care of that child like my grandmother did and my great-grandmother did, and it's your obligation to raise that child because you made a mistake, live with it. And then you have a different thinking, a different ideological thinking that's not a bad person. They don't shame them. They say, wait a minute, this kid has a bright future, worked their butt off for all those years in school. They made a mistake one Friday night. Now they want to get rid of the issue by having an abortion, and they're going to go to college. They're going to be a good, productive servant for our country. And sooner or later, they're going to have kids and a family. What's wrong with that?
I don't think there's nothing wrong with either one, but I will say, I kind of like to look at personal things, and I'm not going to throw out who it is and all this other stuff. But I got some little relatives out there that, man, their mother had every excuse in the world not to have them, you know? I mean, yeah, she didn't have it all that great, Yeah. And I'm grateful that she didn't make that decision, and I'm grateful that they're in our lives, and I'm grateful that she's had to go through a hard road. Now, I've heard some people go, well, you're lucky that all y'all are successful and been able to live there. I'm like, no, we're not lucky. She's gone through a hard road, and she endured, and I'm grateful for that.
So, and that's the key word with a pro-choice. Yep. So I'm a pro person. I'm not saying personally. I'm just saying a person thinks that I'm pro-choice to allow that person in her position, or that person in her family in a physician to determine the rest of this woman's life with or without this child. A person that's pro-life just says, wait a minute, you made a mistake, or you didn't want this pregnancy, or maybe you were still having sex and and the birth control didn't work. And now you have to choose life or we're going to shame you. See, I don't believe we should get into this argument.
I don't think we should be shaming either one.
Right. And
I don't think it's, if somebody chooses to have it, I'm
Now,
grateful
let's
that
get-
they're around.
Okay, no, this is what I'm trying to get to. But now as a government,
Yeah.
we're going in and saying that you can't do something with your own life that you want to do that has been available. It's going to be available no matter if it's legal or not. It's going to happen. If you don't want one, you can find a place to have an abortion.
Yeah.
Like right now, I know people that have literally gone to Mexico to have breast surgery done, facelifts done, nose done, but not only because the doctors have not been doing it when COVID was going as much.
Yeah.
So the price went up to they can't afford it. And they go over and have it done on the weekend. So if a person really wants one, they're going to get it.
Yeah.
Now, are we starting a health issue to having someone to go get a back alley abortion, as they call it? I'm not saying it's going
Yeah.
to be in an alley, but a place that's not as clean and regulated as it should be,
Something that's not
because
endorsed
the
by the
government says you can't do it.
Yeah. So I personally think that, first of all, I got to throw my snide comment in there.
Go ahead.
Some of these is going to Mexico getting these things done to enhance their body. So, there's some that look really good, and some you need to go find a different one because they didn't do it justice.
Some of them, they put some cement in their butts.
Yeah, I know. It didn't, them lips, my God. But anyway, moving along. So back to this here. I personally think that what Roe versus Wade overturning it will do is it will spring forward a forcing function that it will have to hit the legislative floor. Now, will that codify law? I don't know, but for the last 50 years, nobody's even made an attempt
No.
to codify that law.
No.
And I think it's either going to codify the law or it will drive people to elect people that will codify that law, and you will see something different. So what will you see? You will see some states that go overboard of where they were before, and you'll see some states that will constrict from where they were before. In regards to this, I think that this won't be the first Supreme Court ruling on this. I think this very court, within 2 years, will be faced with another ruling that they'll have to deal with one of the states that may posture the codifying as well. You know,
Well, and my thing is, you said the legislative, my thinking is what's going to happen is, depending on the makeup of the court,
yep,
every generation or so, this is going to flip-flop. Because I do not believe that we're ever going to have a supermajority anymore in this country with a liberal side or a Democratic side and a Republican side that we can have enough votes to get the legislation done, because I've said it before, Vet, I've even wrote about it. There is no compromise when it comes to abortion.
I don't think, though, it will be a new law. It won't be based off Roe versus Wade. It would have to be a new law that they would adjudicate, because once they dismiss it, it's going to be dismissed.
Sure, but if you get a more liberal court, and
Yeah.
today's liberal is even more progressive than they were in 1973, then maybe we just say that it can go up to the day the baby's going to be born if I decide I don't want it at the last minute. I'm not saying that's going to happen. That's that extreme that we always get in
Yeah.
talking about, and I don't want to be a part of that.
So
but I do believe that the legislative branch will never be able to fix this problem, because it's not an issue that can be compromised. As the way our government is set up is in the legislative branch is too compromised to get
Yeah,
things done.
I do agree with some of that. I think it'll be interesting it's going to be a strange journey in the next 5 years regarding this right here. And we saw a lot, when this first came out, we had a lot of comments about, well, America lags behind these other countries and this. Actually, most of the European countries is 12 weeks. It's 12 weeks. Some completely outlawed on the books in the law, and then you have to get special permission that involves certain things in order to get it.
I agree.
And that's just the way it is.
Right.
And they're under certain circumstances, like some are strictly rape and sexual assault, or it would endanger the mother, or the child will be born with a mental or physical defect. Some others go as far as, like Poland goes as far as it just ain't going to happen.
Right.
Pretty
And
much.
that's one of those.
You know.
And another thing we have to
So-
look at, because I look at the judicial system, the legal system, is we've had, like in California, with a very famous case that happened 15, 20 years ago with Scott Peterson. Scott Peterson killed his wife, Lacey, while she was pregnant, and he gets 2 counts of murder. This baby was, at that point in time, couldn't live outside of the body with today's
Yeah.
terminology that we use, or it couldn't be considered that we can't abort it. Now, well, that's a woman's body and she can choose. Well, what about, and we bring this up in our Principles of Law class, and it's just always we throw things out to make people think. Critical thinking is something that kids need to do.
Yes.
Is this. Okay, so let's say that a father goes into court because the woman he was with decides she wants an abortion and he wants the baby. He files in court a motion for that baby to be his. And some very conservative judge decides to rule on his behalf that yes, she needs to have that because it's just as much his as her. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you have to make people critically think.
Yeah.
What legalities are we going to have? Because you know somebody's going to file these things. The ACLU for 30 years have made their living on filing weird and outrageous claims in court cases, and every once in a while they win one.
So I will say one thing with the Roe versus Wade is one thing that it has really done is it helped me identify more batshit crazy people than I ever knew before. Because they come up with
On both sides.
On both sides. But they come up with the dumbest freaking memes there is. I mean, they're just, all men then should get vasectomies and have a reverse vasectomy when it's done.
I wish they'd have gave me one at 15 because you can reverse those now. So if the government does it, can they reverse them?
But let me talk about who's going to pay for that.
The government. We're going to pay for it anyway.
Yeah, but how much does it cost to do a reverse vasectomy?
$3,000, maybe $4,000.
Up to $95,000. The average one's $8,000.
If the government gets involved and does it, you know they can do it for $500.
Yeah,
Come
whatever.
on. Prescription drugs, $4.
So really, we want to go down that lane?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, that is some dumbest shit that I've ever heard. And so I've seen all these things. It's like, we should cut this off, and we should. I'm like, what the flip is wrong with you? I'm going to say this though. When it comes to certain things, is I heard somebody who I respect an awful lot that is not the same gender as me say this. You know, where's the personal responsibility on certain things? We expect a man to do this, and we expect a woman to do this. And if they're adults, and please do not misunderstand me on this. I understand that there's a lot of pregnancies that they're not adults. I understand it. We both came from small town East Texas.
Yeah.
We understand the shrinkage of your senior class real quick. Right. You know what I'm saying? But there is some truth to that right there. Is the woman, multiple of them that come out and sit there and say, I've had multiple of them, and I'm talking more than one handful of abortions. That is not the birth control means. I mean, and I just sit there, and then the other thing is I hit you up on a few things on this, is I pulled back the study of how many people who have a baby, what's the percentage of the woman who has a baby commits suicide in the first year after having the baby? It doubles with someone who's had abortion. So there's some mental health things that we don't want to talk about because that's taboo, and that don't stroke the ego on there.
Well, and I have to be totally honest with this too, is that I understand what it means to be a child of God, and to me, I am saved by grace through faith through my Savior Jesus Christ. But that's not the world that we live in, that everybody has to be Christian. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, we would love for that to be. I'd love to have a great commission. Everybody come over to one side. We just have a big old Dallas Cowboy party. But then we wouldn't have the Redskins to play. Redskins. Because we'd all be Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. There's always going to be opposition. But one of the things that I don't like is all these postings on the social media about it's God's child. You're killing God's kid. You're making all these decisions for God. If God's the reason that you got drunk at the club on Friday night and went and had a one-night stand with Julio.
God wasn't in the equation then.
He wasn't totally in the equation then because you were a sinner, but since you got pregnant, it's at conception that was God's will. Now come on, what we're doing is we're making such a mockery. I want to say this. There's a quote that has always come into my mind that all of us out there that needs to do this that are religious people. Brennan Manning wrote a book called The Ragamuffin Gospel that most religious people need to always read or have read, and you have to read it when you go to seminary, and they even made a movie about it. But he said that one of the greatest reasons for atheism is Christians acting un-Christ-like.
Off the chain.
Because all day long, I have a friend of mine, I'm not going to name him, but I should because you've been such a punk the last week on social media. But he brings up things about the abortion and brings up things about, well, just change the heart of man and all these shootings go away. And this gentleman is at the club every week, drinking, smoking marijuana, having sex outside of a marriage, all these things, but he's a Christian.
Yeah.
What we have to do is if you want to change yourself and your proximity by being religious, you need to act like it because people are watching you. I say it all the time. The reason that I have clients now that I train is because they see that I'm in shape. If I was 100 pounds overweight, I should not train people, and no one should ever come to me to be trained because I don't know what I'm doing. It's the same way with this, man. If you're going to put on a platform for something of being a pro-abortion person, or excuse me, pro-choice or pro-life, you need to really live that life. You don't need to point fingers at the other side and hang your hat on just the abortion when you're committing all these sins. That's what I'm trying to say.
I will say this, is there's so many memes out there, and like I said, I've seen people act like fools like you have, but I think it comes down to two things. Somebody believes that the decision of a woman belongs to a woman, and somebody believes that at this point right here is when life is, and they don't want to see nobody murdered, especially little bitty ones. And I think at the end of the day, I'm not here to influence either one of them. I will throw some stats out there that kind of kill the meme comments, you know, but at the end of the day, I'm not looking down on either one of them.
Exactly.
I'm just sitting there saying that, and that's their beliefs. You know, why would I impose my belief on them? That is what this person believes, and that is what this person believes. And to be realistic, neither belief is really that bad. Okay?
Yeah, and last thing I'm going to say, I have 2 daughters. And if either one of them got pregnant, I would talk to them about, hey, you know what? We will help you take care of this kid because you're young, finish your education, we'll do our part. But if they said, you know what? I don't want a kid at all. The minute that abortion went through, if you change your love, tone, attitude, and judgment for that daughter, then you're not looking at yourself in the mirror. Because the man that throws the first stone, that's what we need to be looking at. We all are sinning. We all are, and even if you're not religious and you're watching this, we all make mistakes.
Yep.
But if someone else makes a decision to choose something that you don't agree with, love them anyway.
Yeah. So, you know, this is a healthy debate. If this has been released, did it end the world? If it's going to be released in a few more weeks, does it end the world? Hell no, it doesn't. No. Everybody's got their families to go hug.
We're just trying to put gas in the car and eat food, man. Yeah. That's all we're trying to do.
I had to go get blood just to get a gallon of gas. Man,
hey, I've been stripping on the pole again, brother. I mean, I'm stripping on the pole, and I can afford lunch meat.
I would mow lawns, but that costs gas.
I was like waiting for the money to rain. All of a sudden, the girl says, do you take Cash App? I got $3 for you. I'm like, okay, I quit. I'm off the pole. I'm not doing the Cash App.
So with that, from the coach
to the vet,
stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned.